Hello everybody and welcome to part 5 of our game development in Python with Python 3 and PyGame. Where we left off, we added some boundaries for our car, and right now if we crash we just say game exits. That's not really good because the user might want to play again and again and again. And so what we want to have is something very specific for when the car crashes as opposed to when the person wants to exit the game. Now, to do that, what we're going to do is if the user crashes, we want to display some text to the screen, and then we want to allow them to just play again. So the game should reset somehow. So that's what we're going to do next. So, we'll take... Let me get a phone call. Anyway, we'll take what we have now, and then basically what we want to happen... What I like to do when I program is just kind of like program in reverse sometimes. So we have an end goal in mind, and then we program in reverse to reach that end goal. So our end goal is actually very complex. So we have this end goal of, we want some sort of way to display like you crashed on the screen, and then some way to maybe restart or send them a message and then have them restart. So we want some sort of messaging ability. And there's a lot of code involved in that. But at the end of the day, what do we want to do? Well, at the end of the day, what we'd like to do is if this is the case, then we want to say crash. We just want to say crash function run. That's what we want. So we don't have a crash function. So now we have to define our crash function. So we'll come up here to our list of functions, which right now is really just one besides our game loop, but you'll see as time goes on you'll add many functions. So we've got car. Now we need a new function, crash. So define crash, empty parameters. And what do we want this crash function to do? Well, when the user crashes, you might want to have some sort of display of the wheels flying off or something like that. But for now, we just want to keep it simple. If we crash, we want to message underscore display. We want to send a message to the display. So we want to run a function that messages to the display, you crashed. Okay, that's what we want to do. So we'll run you crashed like that, and then everybody will be happy. So now we see, okay, so we want the crash function to run a message to display. Now, why don't we just have crash doing what the message display function would do? Well, there might be other reasons why you want to message the display screen. There might be other reasons besides just a user crashing. You might want to have other messages display, like good job, or you beat your record, or whatever. So we don't necessarily want to have this whole message display function built into crash. But anyway, so crash, that's all we want to do. We want to run this you crashed basically message. So now we have to define message display. This one's a little more complex. So define message underscore display, and we know that we want to have one parameter that we pass through it. So what is that parameter? We're just going to say text. So what is the text that we want to display? And that's what this function is going to do. So the display text that we're going to run or call is going to be text equals, actually we probably should not redefine text. We'll say, we'll call this large text, and large text equals pygame dot font dot capital F font, and then you can specify the font type and the font size. Our font type, we're going to use free sans bold dot ttf, and the font size for this large text, you don't really know until you see it, but this text on my screen right here is size 22, so we'd want a little bit bigger than that for sure. So we're going to say 115. So we'll make that text font size 115. Now, what do we want? We've got the text. So we've got the text in mind, the size and the text. So you could select a font. Let's say you're in a Word editor, and you select a font and a size. Well, nothing's there yet, right? So you have to write it out basically. And the way that it works in PyGame is you can write it out, and then where you've written it out, it's almost like if you were in Paint or something, and you say you want to add text, and it makes like a square right around the text, and you can move the text around. It's the same thing here. So you'll write some text, but that text is can be referenced by the rectangle that encases that text. So we can use that to place the text. And you'll see what I mean in a minute. So now we're going to say text surface, or text surf, and then text rect, so the surface and then the rectangle that contains it is going to equal text underscore objects, and then in here we pass through text and then large text, like that. So that's that. So what that's going to do is return to us the text surface and the text rectangle. The next thing that we're going to do is going to be, well, first of all, we're going to have to define text objects. Text objects doesn't exist yet, so we're going to have to backtrack on that one as well. But this is how we want this to work. So equals that. And now what we're going to do is basically we want to have this message be kind of like centered on the screen. So to do that, we're going to say text rect dot center equals, and this is going to be display width. So up here we've defined display width as 800. So where we want this text, how would we center it? Well, we would center it in the middle of display width, in the middle of display height. So display width divided by 2, and so that's the x, basically where we want the x, and then the y is going to be display, and let me make some space here, display underscore height, and then this will also be divided by 2. So that's how to center it. Now, what we're going to say is we're going to say game display dot blit. So remember, we used blit with our image to kind of like draw it to the screen. It's not yet showing it, but it's like there in the background. So game display dot blit, and what do we want to actually blit is the text surface, and then text rectangle, and that's it basically for our message display. And then for our message display, we really just want that to be on the screen for X amount of moments. So what we can do is we could basically say message display and then time.sleep 2 seconds or something like that, and we can make the game start over. And then after those 2 seconds are done, how would we start the game over? Well, if we don't do anything, when this is all done, it would go PyGame quit and then quit. It would leave the game. We don't really want that to happen. So after we've slept, we'll just re-reference game loop, and that will start everything over again. It'll start the car over, start the X change over, it'll start game exit over, and it starts all of our logic over. Our score, which we'll have later on, objects, and difficulty, everything will just be reset, right? So let's save this. Well, actually, we can't do anything just yet because we still have one more function that we haven't described yet, and that's text objects. So now we have to define text objects. So we'll come over here and we'll say define text underscore objects, and we know that we want to pass 2 functions through, and that's going to be text and then what is the text basically. So so text and then font basically. So large text is what is the font and the size. So we want to pass through it text and font, okay, of our text objects. Now this one's pretty simple. Text objects will just be text surface equals font dot render, and luckily font dot render is something that is included with PyGame, so we don't have to code that. Font dot render. What do we want to render? We want to render the text. The next parameter is for anti-aliasing. For now, we're just going to not consider what that is and all that. We're just going to use true. And then what color do we want that font to be? For now, we have black and white. Since our background is white, we should use black. We could also do red, though. And then later on as well, you could say color here, and we could really customize a lot of messaging, and you could pass whatever color you wanted. So if you crash, that's red. If you did really good, green, you know, that kind of stuff. So here we render the font, and then at the end of it, we return text surface, and then text surface dot get underscore rectangle. So if you remember, the reason why we're doing that is so that we can get the rectangle of, you know, around our text, so we can use that to position our text, which we do right here. And that's it. That should run, should display our message for 2 seconds, and then return the game loop. Let's see how that works out for us. So here's our car, awesome, and we crash. Uh-oh. Oh, we have not imported time. Yes. All the way to the top, where you have import PyGame, we will import time. Let's try that again. Like that sound. So we crash, and we didn't get the message to the surface. Whoops. Oh, and probably the reason why we didn't is here we game display.blit, but we didn't update the display. So we need to do game display.update. I want to say we need one more thing. Yeah, game pygame.display.update. That's what it is. So copy, come back up here, paste. So we need to, after we've write this, because this is basically in the background. So then you have to update it to your display. So let's try that. See if we can get by this way. And there we go. Okay, so we got our message. You crashed. Holds there for 2 seconds, and the game starts again. Let's try the other side now. Boom, you crashed. Game over. You start again. Okay, so there we have a very basic messaging system. Oh, and here's why. Nice. So this needs to run a quit. So when you hit the X, we're still running that crashed, right? It's running the crash, and we're not actually ever leaving. So we'll come over here, and game X equals true. We don't really want that to be the case. So if the person wants to quit, basically we can just run these two things, pygame.quit and then quit. So we could go here and we go pygame.quit, and then we call the quit for Python. So let's save and run that one more time. And crash, we still crash, cool, we still play. But then when we hit the X, we leave. Okay, that's what we want. Awesome. Okay, so now we've got some boundaries. We've got this kind of like you crashed functionality going on. Now we're ready to kind of add the actual point of the game, which would be like objects and stuff that we're ready to avoid and that kind of stuff. So anyway, stay tuned for that. If you guys have any questions or comments, something going wrong here, feel free to leave those questions and comments below. As always, thanks for watching. Thanks for all the support and subscriptions. And until next time.